This is the November 4th edition of Beyond the Data. We are here today with attorneys Warner Mendenhall and Tom Connors from the Mendenhall Law Group in Akron. You guys have been doing quite a lot of work lately, getting a lot of business, doing a lot of cases and winning, or essentially winning a lot of them. And well, yeah, a lot of people definitely want to, first of all, hear what you guys have been up to, what wins you have made. And also we have this kind of like hybrid format here with the Zoom call going on live to Facebook, so that people can also ask questions more specific to their specific situations. So if you guys want to, start off, tell us about some of the court cases you guys have been through recently.
I'll go ahead and start. Okay. Well, I mean, unfortunately, and we've been repeating a little bit, I'm going to be trying to admit people as I talk. Unfortunately, in this situation that everybody finds themselves in, we have people getting arrested for various reasons. We've got people that are on the verge of losing their job if they don't take the vaccine. We've got one company that absolutely denied everyone's request for exemption for religious reasons. And, we've got other companies that have denied some, granted some. There's no rhyme or reason to how these companies are proceeding. That's sort of on the employment side. On the education side, we're dealing with local school districts that, are requiring masks for their kids, local school districts and colleges that, particularly the colleges, are requiring the vaccination. And I'm sorry to be a little disjointed. I am trying to keep up with the people trying to join in here. But, the colleges have, they've required the vaccine. They're losing employees over it. They're also problematic in terms of what they're doing for people who want an exemption. So if you want an exemption, they've got all kinds of conditions for the exemption. And those conditions are onerous. And I think those conditions are violating people's rights. Tom, why don't you go on about what happened at Miami University?
Okay, well, we did bring an action on behalf of Jennifer Salico and her husband and Judy Vest. The claim is against Miami University, of course, and there's a number of claims. There's a number of statutes. There's a constitutional provision that help limit what a public institution or a public university can do in terms of a vaccine mandate. There's a statute that limits mandates for non-FDA authorized vaccines. So let me talk about that a little bit. The Comirnaty is an authorized vaccine, but it's not available. However, Miami University is saying, well, it is, because on the website or CDC, it says that there are lots available. But I've been trying to find out if there's any available in Ohio. And our research shows that it's not available in Butler County or at Miami University's clinic. And we're trying to get an answer from the Department of Health. Interestingly, the associate who was asked to find out from the Department of Health whether they have Comirnaty available was told it's too volatile of a political issue and wouldn't respond, which is not what I would expect a public servant to do. So we still have to nail that down. But the bottom line is, if you can't mandate non-FDA authorized vaccines, So there is a hearing. It's set for November 17, and that's one of the issues that will be addressed there. There's a difficulty in that all three of the plaintiffs have gotten exemptions. So the question is, well, is this moot? But in fact, it's rather difficult to declare a case moot once it's been filed, unless there's no claims available. And there are claims available even for the conditions. In other words, if you get an exemption, there's conditions that are placed on you, one of which is to wear masks. And there's limits on mask mandates. The Ohio legislature has passed a statute limiting local health districts, saying that you cannot apply preventative measures except to persons who have been diagnosed with the disease or persons who have come into close contact with such people. And the mask mandates obviously don't meet that. They are just general mandates. They're preventative measures. So no, they don't comply with that statutory limit.
And is that statutory, sorry, is that statutory limit, is that from HB 244? So it's only limited to educational facilities, public schools, or is that a separate one?
It's limited to health departments and local health departments. So it's not just limited to public institutions. In fact, that's one of the issues. They're trying to say, well, and when I say public institution, I mean the public universities. They're saying, well, it doesn't apply to us. However, what they're referring to is a general law that says that they've got authority generally to administer the public university. And case law has said, sure, you've got general authority, but there's reasonable limits that we're going to apply. And reasonableness is defined by public policy as manifest by statutes. And so this is a statute that limits the local health departments. And it makes no sense to think that somehow the public universities have more authority on health matters than the health department. So I believe that will be applied to them, but it is a new context. And so we don't have a ruling. There's no prior precedent. It just makes sense. So we're going to make that argument. And there's other claims, one of which is the Ohio Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, says that you have a right to personal autonomy, and it's been defined by the Ohio Supreme Court to mean that means you've got the right to refuse medication. So Miami University came back and said, well, Jacobson, which is a 1905 United States Supreme Court decision, does permit a vaccine. However, Jacobson was based on a principle that the state has authority in matters of health under something called the police power. And the Supreme Court said, yes, you've got that authority, but you also have the authority to determine what in your wisdom is best. And in Ohio's wisdom, they've decided that there's limits and that you have to show a compelling interest when you are requiring medication to be taken. So I don't think Jacobson applies here. It applies to the 14th Amendment, it applies to the federal Constitution. And the principle under which Jacobson is applying would give Ohio discretion, and they've exercised that discretion. This is the argument that we're presenting, and I think it's a sound argument. So we will see what the court has to say about that. A lot of this is novel and requires thinking carefully about it. The courts haven't had to look at it, so it's going to be new to them, and we're going to have some back and forth on it. But those are three of the basic principles. One of the issues is that Miami University wants to give exemptions to people who stand up and oppose this and bring a lawsuit. And that helps them in the sense that they're going to say, well, it's moot now. But under their policy, you have to agree to a number of health measures, one of which was the masking, which I explained, which itself has problems in that they're exceeding their authority under statute. So that's a summary of what we've got going there. And I think I did say that we've got a hearing November 17. Now the court's going to look at this before and decide whether or not that hearing needs to go forward. So we have to wait and see what the court's going to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, basically what happened with Miami University, these employees challenged Miami University and the university backed down. And, you know, we've been seeing that throughout the state as people stand up in Clyde and Sandusky and Massillon. Really, frankly, what happened is the people have turned their attention to the school boards and the schools. They consulted with us, and it seems like as we start to focus on the school board and that school district, they collapse and they get rid of the mask mandate. So we've had that now happen, I think 5 times so far. We are actively talking with people in other districts. So I'll certainly update you, Catherine, as that happens. But it is really interesting, you know, to just shift our attention to a school district and watch it sort of fade away. And as parents, you know, get activated and provide data to the school boards, many of them are folding. There is one Revere School District. We recently got a letter from a high-powered law firm, that was basically a bunch of nonsense. But it does seem like Revere may be one of the school districts that wants to maintain whatever their masking policies are. So we'll see what happens with that. It's all developing so fast. And I just want to clarify a little bit. I'm going to repeat what Tom said. I may say it a little differently. To us, it's fairly straightforward. And I'm going to admit some more people here. To us, it's a fairly straightforward analysis. It's the health departments that are tasked with enforcing health policy. It's that simple. And they're the ones who have to identify someone who is ill, and they have to identify the people that they've been in contact with. And once they've done that, then they can impose some measures. They actually have the police power to impose those measures. But schools do not have that power. They're there to educate our kids. They're not there to make health decisions. I hear somebody coughing. If you would, just keep it on everybody, and run a question through the messages to us if you want to get us a question. Okay, there are a lot of people on this call. I am not sure how many there are, but there are a lot. So somebody is unmuted and they're okay. Oh, I see. There we go. I got it. Okay, so sorry to get distracted there. I'm trying to manage the meeting, which I'm not expert at. And I'm not used to running a meeting that has more than a couple of people in it. So everybody who's on the call, if you have a question, put it in the messages and we'll get those questions. We'll try to answer them as best we can. So I hope that we've updated you kind of in terms of where the schools are. I don't, with the recent approval for kids, I guess as young as 5, it will be interesting to see what happens there. Most of the parents that we're dealing with are absolutely, that is the line in the sand. Even if the father or the mother has gotten vaccinated because they felt they had to through work, they do not want those kids vaccinated. So I think the line in the sand is, coming down to our children, and, people do not want children taking a vaccine that apparently is a leaky, worthless vaccine, and is risky, especially for the young men, I guess, with the cardio issues. So we see that happening with parents. Even if a parent is taking the vaccine to keep working, they do not want those kids getting the shot. So I'd like to, anyway, let's move on a little bit to the.
Well, can I actually step back for a moment here? I got a question for you. When you guys are talking about, you mentioned this to me last week as well, that every time you would glance in the general direction of any of these institutions, they would just back down. What part actually gets them to back down? At what point during this whole interaction? Because in the end, what I think a lot of people are most interested in is how do we replicate you? How do we make this happen in more places? Do they need an attorney, or were there certain actions by the parent groups that got them to move?
Yeah, we are actually trying to replicate ourselves. Today, we talked with 2 other attorneys that are interested in local action. So we are doing the best we can to reach out to attorneys who are willing to assist in the effort. And I'm hoping that will speed up because we absolutely, it's been frustrating for our clients. It's been frustrating for us. I know, the other week, I think I told you I was 80 phone calls behind. The other day I looked at it and we were closer to 150 phone calls behind. So it is really something. And I've got some staff here. We're literally having to figure out new mechanisms to deal with all the phone calls, but we're working through it.
I think what the response is in terms of maybe softening is to exempt those who are willing to stand up and resist or become a party to a lawsuit. Because if you give them an exemption, then they gain an argument that the case should go away. That's the extent to which they have been, I guess, softer. I don't think that they've gotten away from their policy generally, but they're
as far as I understand, that you've got a couple school districts that walked away from their mask mandates. Is that true? Or
well, Massillon, I suppose, did.
Massillon did, Clyde did, Sandusky did so far.
Right.
That we know of. And there's
because I know of a lot of parents that are specifically on that particular issue, like with the mask mandates, where that is their big hill right now, and that's something that's really locally important. And is it possible for those groups to, has there been a set of trigger words is basically what I'm asking, or is it just simply, hi, I'm an attorney and I'm representing a group who's against this mask mandate? What gets those places, specifically, for instance, the mask mandates in schools? Because that one seems like a little less complicated a situation than the vaccine mandates.
Well, I do think there's a limit on preventative measures now, given the limit on the local health departments. So there's the dilemma from the point of view of the schools is that, or at least this is what they're saying, they're supposed to be limited to applying this policy only to those who are diagnosed with it or for people who've come into contact with them. So that would mean they would have to do the contact tracing. I'm not really sure how much of that they do. I don't think that there are policies like that in most of the health districts. But the schools are saying, well, the safest thing to do is to just have everyone wear masks. And then when somebody does get diagnosed, we can still keep people there because they have had the masks on. And I don't think that that is permitted under the law. Maybe it's their concept of what is practical. I don't think that the masks, looking at what the experts have been telling us, are actually effective, at least the ones that are, well, the mask, I suppose if you had the N95 respirator, you might actually get some protection. So I don't know that that is truly a logical means of responding. But in any event, the law does say that you are limited to a quarantine or masking preventative policies to apply only to those who are diagnosed or who have come into close contact. So the general policies are against that, and therefore I think we've got a basis for pushing back as a matter of law. Now, it does mean, however, that people, if you get diagnosed with it, that you're going to be quarantined. And if you've come into close contact with them, that you can be quarantined. So what they're saying is, gee whiz, that means so many of the children will have to go home. I do think that makes sense, that maybe a parent could say, well, I guess I would voluntarily agree to have the mask on because of that. But I don't think you can mandate it, at least not generally.
Let's switch over to a couple of these questions. I think we've kind of answered that first one. How do you convince the superintendent? I mean, first of all, get organized. Make sure you got people at your board meetings. They are backing down based on parent organization as well. I just talked to somebody from Upper Arlington, and the people got organized, went to the meetings regularly, and they backed down. That's north of Columbus. Here's the next one here. How can we get through to schools on what is on the market now? Well, you've got to stand strong. This is not, Comirnaty is not on the market, period. It's not available. It's not available in Ohio. We are actively pushing the Ohio Department of Health to tell us where it is available, if they think it's available, but it is simply not there. The only shot that's available is not Comirnaty. We had a question about the Ohio National Guard. I do believe that the Ohio National Guard is covered by the Ohio Constitution. You certainly still have, even under the federal Constitution, you've got religious freedom. You've got a number of ways that you can challenge that. And let me go down here some more. Yeah, whether BioNTech is identical to Comirnaty, it doesn't matter. Comirnaty is not available. That's the only quote unquote approved shot.
Well, let me speak to that.
Okay, go ahead.
They did indicate that it is similar for purposes of safety and effectiveness. However, they also acknowledge that it's legally distinct. And that legal distinction is a big deal in Ohio, because if it's an EUA authorized vaccine, the schools can't mandate it. Bottom line, period.
Okay, the next question up here, and I do see Forever Young. I see your hand. I'll try to let you in here in a minute. Somebody asked, what about a federal employee? And they are covered. Federal employees are covered by a little bit different regime. We do believe that there is, that this is discriminatory under Title VII. Why don't you go into that a little bit, Tom?
Yeah, I've been looking at the contractor mandate issue, trying to figure out how we are going to respond to that. And the main approach is going to be through Title VII, which involves religious discrimination. And I do think that you should be able to get religious exemptions. They're going to push back perhaps and say, well, there's a hardship to us in some way, at least they're allowed to do that. So that's one issue. There's another set of issues that have come up recently because the states, the attorney generals in many of the states have filed actions recently saying that essentially the federal government lacks authority because they didn't follow certain procedural rules. And there's a number of claims, and I won't go try to detail all of that, but those cases were just filed yesterday or the day before, something like that. And what they're saying is that there's lack of authority in essence. So that's a second set of issues. And then a third would be whether terminating employment in violation of public policy would provide some protection. That's a principle of Ohio law that says that there's a clear public policy and that the person's employment is terminated in violation of that, then that's a problem. That's not permissible. And what we've got there in terms of public policy that might work, well, the emergency use authorization vaccines all have said that they are subject to the right of citizens to decline to take them. So if we're attempting to mandate someone by terminating them if they will not do so, I say that they're violating that important public policy. There's, I think, in Ohio, the constitutional provision of that protects the right to refuse medication is an important public policy. And so if you're mandating someone or terminating their employment in order to coerce them into accepting or taking this vaccine, I would say that that's a violation of that concept. So that's a number of ways that we can approach this. And again, none of this has been tested in the sense that we have prior courts having said, yes, all of this is correct, because it's a novel situation. So we're going to learn. We're going to start with the contractor mandate issue was a little bit more difficult because it involved trying to figure out all of this federal law. And it was very helpful that the attorney generals filed their lawsuits because they did all the research, pointed out all the flaws, and now we've got that available to us.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, that is one of the problems that we're all facing is that, there are not model lawsuits out there yet in general. I mean, one of the things that I'm very curious to find out, when they say we have to make an accommodation for a religious exemption, I mean, at this point, I think probably everybody on this call knows that if you're vaccinated, you can still get the disease, carry the disease. We've all heard that. Well, why would you just test unvaccinated people? Why would you just require unvaccinated people to wear a mask? That doesn't make any logical sense. Certainly, I think everybody sees that. Let's go ahead. I'm going to let Forever Young, let's see, ask to unmute. Okay, go ahead, Forever Young. If you're still there.
I wonder if he's...
Yes, hi. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can, you're loud and clear.
Okay, great. And I went ahead and posted, I figured out the chat. I have a couple questions. I'll just go with one right now and see if there's time allowed for the other. I have two children at the University of Cincinnati, and they did receive religious exemptions, but now they have to be weekly tested. And per our exemption, we did extend to also an exemption for testing. How can we combat that? What is the approach for?
Well, okay, the statute that says that you may not mandate non-FDA authorized vaccines also says that you can't discriminate between those who have taken non-FDA authorized vaccines and those who are unvaccinated. So what that means is that if they're going to be testing the unvaccinated, they have to be testing those who received these unauthorized vaccines or the non-EUA, the non-approved vaccines.
Just, I mean, real quickly, they're in violation of the law as we know it right now.
But that's a complicated analysis. I don't know that anyone has ever, that they're aware of this. The problem is all of these vaccines are non-FDA approved. So now you can't discriminate between people who have taken those vaccines and the unvaccinated. I mean, that's what the statute says, but I hear people talking about that. Someone
Right.
have to bring that up. They're not going to like it.
I mean, it's illegal because it goes against the Nuremberg Code, correct?
Well,
Well,
I'll tell you what, I mean, one of the things that we've said to everyone, we're trying to keep the focus narrow right now. We have good basis in Ohio law to challenge that type of behavior. So we can use our own constitution and our own law. I mean, certainly we all know, about the Nuremberg Code, but we have enough under Ohio law to do this and to get it handled. Our law reflects people's rights to personal and bodily autonomy. We can use that. Those are the same rights that are exemplified by the Nuremberg Code, but we have it in Ohio law. We don't have to look to international law to get there. It's in our Constitution.
I got you. That's great. Great. So we already have precedent.
Yes.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
as a practical matter, University of Cincinnati is not going to buy this argument unless someone forces it on them. So you
Yeah.
have to go to court.
And we
basically.
have heard from a number of people from University of Cincinnati. So there's a lot of, I mean, I can tell you the parents throughout the state are up in arms. They're organizing at University of Cincinnati. If you're not already part of the groups down there, get one, form one. You guys need to find each other. Ohio U, I know, has a very, very quickly organizing group. University of Akron has a very quickly organizing group. So it's coming together, and I know this is happening so fast, it's taking people by surprise, but just connect with each other. That keeps the cost down too. An individual family can't afford the legal costs, but a group of 10 or 20 people can spread it among themselves and get it done.
Yeah, if there's one thing I would emphasize is that the Ohio legislature has passed some statutes that give us good arguments, and people perhaps don't appreciate them yet. So we've got to, they may not even understand the implications. The one that limits the health departments to preventative measures applied only to those who are diagnosed is an important one. That makes it difficult for them to be doing these general measures. The one that says you can't discriminate between those vaccinated with non-FDA approved vaccines. I don't think people realize what that means. Everybody who's gotten the vaccine till now has had a non-FDA approved vaccine. So now if they start treating the unvaccinated differently than them, they're in violation of that law.
Makes sense. That's great. And just real quickly, when you said there are some groups I've associate or come in contact with, is the University of Cincinnati maskless group and whatnot. What action are you referring to? Gather and then come to you and spread the cost out, or gather and somehow what pressure would be effective?
You would
I
probably have to bring a lawsuit
Yeah.
unless they're willing to maybe back down if a letter was sent. But I doubt it. I doubt that they'll accept it that easily.
This is all you got to attack this every way you can. So I think people need to organize, write to the college trustees. If somebody felt like protesting, I would even recommend that. That can drive some media coverage as to what's going on. I think it's a basket of things that cause them to break. So obviously public protest, public communication, legal communication, and lawsuits are all part of that basket that is going to break this spell that seems to have taken over our colleges. Go ahead.
On the mask mandates, you're going to get a response back that, well, gee whiz, this is helping, and how can you oppose that? So we do need to inform. I've got an affidavit from an expert in Columbus who's an industrial hygienist, and he explains that these masks are basically ineffective. They're ineffective for two reasons: because they're not fine enough to filter out the COVID, but secondly, they're not form-fitting, so that it's going to come in through the gaps. Their recommendation is that improvements in ventilation be made. Or if you've got someone who's vulnerable, get them an N95 respirator. My point is that there are actually protective ways of dealing with this. The ineffective ways that are, besetting us should not be used because of that. So when someone says, well, this is helping people and you're preventing us from helping people, the answer is no, you don't understand. This is not working, and there are effective things that could be done, but we've got to get that word out. So when you're pushing back, that should be part of it.
Okay, I've had a couple of questions about recording. Catherine, you are going to post this on Facebook, correct?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the way it works here is that since we are live streaming to Facebook, it automatically records it on Facebook. And usually what I would do with the StreamYard situation is I would live stream to Facebook, and then I would download that Facebook Live, and then I will post it to YouTube as well, to the normal YouTube channel.
Okay, and Forever Young, there is a group, somebody texted us here in chat that has formed at University of Cincinnati. So if you could post your email maybe over in the chat so they can get a hold of you, that would be good. And we are not, I can tell everybody right now, unfortunately, the messages that are coming in, I cannot keep up with them. We're going to do what we can. So Forever Young, please post your email for the group in UC. And I'm going to scroll back and see what I've got going on here. Employer mandating a weekly health assessment form filled out. Oh my goodness, along with a weekly form. That's weird. Brianna, can you raise your hand so I can see you on the call? Maybe we'll let you in on that one. First of all, we all have health privacy. I think that's partly what's, being lost in all this. Employers don't have an unlimited right to inquire as to your health situation. So, that's one of the things. The other thing, obviously as workers, if you're able to group together, I'm sure nobody wants to be filling out a weekly health assessment at work. And if you guys are able to group together, you've got power in numbers. So I hope that.
Well, Brianna, is this being required of everyone at work, including the vaccinated?
It sounds like it here. She's not live here. So
Well,
if she wants to pop on, we'll let you in. Okay.
This has been
Little.
There actually were oh yeah, you should answer Brianna's question there, but there's actually quite a few questions on Facebook as well. So if you
I'm not on Facebook. You're gonna have to tell me what's going on.
Yeah, I've been taking notes here.
Yeah. So I've blocked him, and I apologize for taking so much time. It takes me a minute. All right. Brianna has a question again.
That
Go
was
ahead.
the question about UC, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was about work employer.
Oh,
Mandating that we fill out a weekly health assessment on if we have a cough, a runny nose, if we traveled, are we sick? And then we have to fill out a weekly form on, have we gotten the shot yet? Do we plan on getting the shot? Do we not have the shot? And the first form about being sick and things like that, they told me just to lie on it and fill it out. And I did it the first week. And then I'm like, because I've only worked for them a couple of weeks and they knew where I stood with all this. And then I'm like, no, I'm not filling it out anymore. So I didn't know.
Well, I'm not gonna ask.
And I work remote is the thing. I work from home.
Oh my goodness. That's ridiculous. What do you have to say about that?
Are they requiring everyone to do this?
Yes.
Okay.
And she works
Well,
from home.
I've never even been into the office. Yeah.
What kind of job is it? Or you can name the employer.
I'm doing QA QC for just documents on online.
Oh my God. Wow.
it's pretty
Well-
common. I mean, I've heard it as well, where not so much the filling out the forms, but definitely the testing, even though you're at home. That seems to be one of the things that is being done. So is that something then that people can go after, this business of you don't even set foot into the office? Because that's happening.
Well, I'm not sure that we can micromanage the private employers. Now, if they go to an extreme where they're terminating or disciplining someone, maybe there's a limit there.
Well, that's what I'm looking at, is I'm afraid I'll lose the job if I don't comply. So every time they send me a request to do it, I just say, I've sent an email in with questions. So they can't say I'm not ignoring answering the questions. I've sent an email for them to send me the law that states they have a right to ask my personal confidential medical information.
And how do they respond to that? They don't respond to that? Or
They haven't responded, no.
I think that's a great response, actually. So keep it up.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, obviously what's starting to happen, and we're already starting to see this, is that we do have employers who are opposed to the mandates, and we're starting to see a real split. So to some extent, we are going to find ourselves with employers and employees who oppose the mandates finding themselves. There's plenty of employers that need help that aren't for the mandates. I hate to say it, but I mean, our office is, we have certainly attracted employees who are all opposed to the mandates. We have done a couple of recent hires just to try to handle the load, and everybody's pretty motivated because a couple of them were either fired or on their way to being fired from their old jobs over the mandate.
Okay.
Last little bit. I am not going to be able to keep up with everybody's questions here. I'm sorry about.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's see what we got here.
So here I got a question for you as well. One of the questions over on Facebook side of things is the commentary from some of the schools talking about why they refuse to remove their mask mandates, that they're afraid of liability. And the question is this a legitimate excuse that they're using, or is that full of it as well? Is that something where...
The funny thing is there's no way they can, they've got liability right now. They have liability for the mandates. I think that's why the attention of attorneys is helping to accelerate them folding. The answer on their liability about COVID is absolutely not. They'd have liability for the flu and the chicken pox and everything else then, and they've never had liability for that at all. And kids, are obviously more endangered by the flu and more likely to get the flu at school. No, the historical record is there is going to be no liability. This is far less dangerous than the flu for kids. Unless they want to open themselves up to liability for flu. I mean, that's a ridiculous argument.
So that would be, so for parents who are getting this answer from their school when they ask about the mask mandates, that would be what you would recommend that they come back in response with, is if you're liable for COVID-19, if you don't do masks, does that also mean that you're saying you're liable for flu? I mean, how would you tell parents to attack that?
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean you're liable for an illness that goes around in public and in the school? I mean, that just simply historically is not the case.
So I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, there's no basis for their liability on that, unless are they all of a sudden accepting liability for the flu and chickenpox? Great.
I have no, I've heard this one before. I mean, this isn't the first time. And I kind of wonder if it's coming out of House Bill 606, because which is of course no longer in effect, because in that one they had, they said that all of the businesses and employers were exempt from liability so long as they took the recommended measures. And so maybe that's where these schools are coming from. But even then, 606 is no longer in effect.
Let me explain from a lawyer's perspective how that works. To prove liability for something, you have to have a proximate cause. To have a proximate cause, you have to see that from point A to point B, this happened. There is no way with COVID to show that, oh, you got it at school versus home versus the grocery store versus the library or the gym or wherever else you wandered. It is absolutely simple. If somebody tried to hold a school liable, we could defend that so easily because if that person had any other exposure anywhere to other people, you can't get your proximate cause together. You understand? You see what I'm saying? You have to show that this caused that. Being at school caused you to get COVID. Well, being at home maybe caused you to get COVID, or being at the library caused you to get COVID. You can't separate out the causality of it in order to create that kind of liability, even if you could. You know, so it's just a ridiculous statement on its face. Totally ridiculous. So I
Yeah,
hope
so
that
I see somebody commented here on Zoom as well, saying that their school is doing the exact same thing because of masks, because of liability, and that there had been lawsuits about it. So I'm assuming, Megan, you're talking about that they were saying people were threatening to sue the school that their kid would get infected at
They
school.
said they said that multiple other schools had been sued. Not in the state though, because I asked.
I don't know.
And that they wouldn't give us mask optional, even though, I mean, we gave them very good reasons to do so. So we're trying to find a lawyer because this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know of any lawsuits like that, and we're really trying to pay attention. So if there is a lawsuit like that out there, it's certainly a one-off weird lawsuit. And I would, and if somebody knows of a lawsuit to require masks, we'd love to look at it just to see what was being claimed. So
I can ask and try to send it to you guys.
yeah, have them. I mean, and that's an important thing, is to challenge them on these statements, because I can tell, you just heard my explanation. It's so absolutely ridiculous. It's just laughable that they would claim that to you. So challenge them to provide you with any example of that. And then if you get one, please send it to me. I want to see that type of stuff. I'd love to see it. I can guarantee it's going nowhere. So I can't even keep up with these messages. We have 7 new messages here.
Oh, so I'll try to keep my eyes on the messages for you. So here's a comment here. Apparently, another school had come back that they are having, they're doing the whole liability thing, saying that if they don't follow the mandate, that they're afraid that their insurance carrier will not cover them during ensuing litigation.
Well,
is that also absolutely full of it, or they might have
not
something
necessarily. I mean, the insurance companies may be setting certain limits, perhaps. I don't know, by making it hard to get insurance, perhaps. But the bottom line is that doesn't matter. You know, under Ohio law, there's limits to what they can do with mask mandates. They can use, it's a preventative measure, and you can only apply it to people who are diagnosed or who are in close contact with someone. So they could require people who were in close contact with someone who is diagnosed to wear a mask. They could do that.
We have had a couple of people ask if we will take cases. The answer is we will be happy to talk to you about your case. If it's something that we can't do, we'll try to connect you with an attorney that will do it. I just reiterate that we have got hundreds of phone calls, and we are trying to keep up. We've set up new systems to do it. So the best thing to do would be to email us. Kay is doing our intake. I'll put that on a message to everybody so that you have it. It's just Kay@WarnerMendenhall.com. She's doing their intake work right now. And we are trying to keep people up to speed on COVIDlawcast.com. You know, as things develop, we'll try to put those cases and outcomes on COVIDlawcast.com. Let me go back to, let's see here.
Yeah, there's so here's another question. One more. I don't know if you guys have had any chance to even think about it yet, but again, we all got the news this morning that the OSHA mandates are coming down right now. Have you guys looked at that at all? Have you
Yes.
started considering how we can fight that?
Well, I think what's going to happen with OSHA, we don't think we're going to have to deal with the OSHA situation directly, because I can tell you there are other firms that are ready to go with OSHA complaints. I imagine there's been a complaint already filed today somewhere in the country. OSHA is to deal with workplace hazards. They don't deal with societal hazards. And I saw the language that they used. It's just ridiculous. So they have had these types of kind of temporary emergency orders, since OSHA was formed in the 70s. Most of them have been overturned in the courts. I think Brianna wants to say something again. Can you let her in, or I'll ask her to.
Unfortunately, you're totally in control. I can't.
No, I didn't have anything else.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It must be Dee here. I'll ask Dee to unmute. Thanks, Brianna.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dee.
Yeah, so I go to UC and they're asking for you for you to test weekly. So I applied for the religious vaccine or the religious exemption, and then to be tested weekly. I went ahead and sent a letter to kind of like ask for totally excused from both, using the House Bill 244 as discrimination.
Yes.
For the PCR testing, and I used the religious like discrimination my First Amendment rights, along with the what was it, the act. I don't know. I wrote it out. I don't have it in front of me right now. But is that, so I went with the religious side plus with the House Bill 244 side. And is that something that that potentially I could like use if I don't know, does that work, or what do you think about that?
In short, it should work. But I saw some messaging about University of Cincinnati that maybe there's a group formed down there. And I know we've talked to a number of parents, so there are groups forming. Gosh, I hope you guys can find each other, because, you could be part of a lawsuit against them for the discrimination. And your issues could be dealt in a lawsuit with a group of people.
I am in with that group.
Okay.
So I'm waiting to hear back. I sent it yesterday and I'm waiting to hear back, but, and I used those two things with some of the language, but I was just wondering what you thought about that.
I think it's good. And I think you were referring to RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
Well, now remember,
ahead.
in the context of a religious exemption or accommodation, they can set, an accommodation means they can set reasonable restrictions to that. So the question of whether testing every week is a reasonable accommodation is a question. I'm not sure what the court will do with that. Where I do think it becomes a discrimination that's unlawful is under the statute that says you can't discriminate between those who are vaccinated with non-FDA approved vaccines and the unvaccinated.
And that's what I used, was the non-FDA approved.
Right. So unless they're doing that to everyone, that would be discrimination precluded by that statute.
You said you had already contacted a group down at UC, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, why don't you post that as a direct message to everybody? I think we've got some people who've asked what group.
Can I give an email? Because we're kind of connecting through email.
Yeah, put an email out there. Yes, sure.
So yeah, we can put up an email if someone wanted to reach out.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
mean, we do think that those, we do think that the accommodations that they're doing are, they're nonsense as well. So, I mean, I think that's, eventually we're going to have this out in court, but there's no need to accommodate somebody who doesn't take a vaccine beyond any accommodation they're doing for anybody else, because there's no difference in terms of really, whether they can get infected or whether they can spread it, like I said at the beginning of this. So they're going to have to justify these accommodations. Okay, I do see this lawsuit somebody posted. That's great. We'll follow up on that lawsuit in Wisconsin. I will look it up and find out what's going on with that. I appreciate you.
What is it saying?
Parents sue Wisconsin schools after students catch COVID. I can tell you my prediction is it goes nowhere. They have to really tie it to the school district. So thank you. I think it's Megan Lee. I appreciate that. All right. Update of the Portsmouth case. I've got a couple of questions about I've got a couple of questions about federal contractors, and there's one about Portsmouth. We have been, I was in Portsmouth Sunday. It's the gaseous diffusion plant down there, and they're all federal contractors, getting mandated. And one of the contractors down there is completely denied all religious exemptions. So for those on the line that are concerned about the Portsmouth case in particular in federal contracting, we are moving forward on that. I know there's on that particular case, there's a November 17th deadline. And then the workers down there are going to go on a 2-week furlough. They're definitively fired. They would be fired December 1st. I do think that we are already seeing at the federal level some flexibility about that. Our goal at this point is to file before everyone goes on furlough on the 17th. I can tell you that, organizing a big group of people, we're doing everything we can to get everything for that case organized. It is difficult because we need to know the particulars for everybody involved in these types of cases. And we are going to work as fast as we can to get that information together. And I did talk to Angela tonight about that, so she's aware of that. And I have had a volunteer, I've had a young law student volunteer to assist us in that case who lives in Columbus. So we're trying to connect everybody up and get that organized as quickly as possible. And that case will be a crucible for the federal mandates. It brings the contractors together, the federal mandates together, everybody down there is certainly at a very high risk here. So we're going to do everything we can. All right. And I'm sorry we're not going to be able to get to everybody's questions. We'll try to get some more. What do you have on your side, Catherine?
So one thing I would like to actually ask is about, as you said there, with the OSHA situation, you're not particularly concerned that you yourselves will have to get involved in it because everybody else in the country is going to town on that one. What would you recommend people do who have their employers start threatening them with this OSHA mandate? I mean, what action should you take if you're an employee of a company that's like, oh, well, this is going to happen. So what should you do?
First of all, I can tell you that as these cases develop on OSHA in particular, we will put the information on that covidlawcast.com as quickly as we can get it out there. We are paying attention to that. If you feel like a firing or a layoff is imminent, I'm not going to tell people not to call us. Go ahead and call us. You know, there may be something we can do at that point, but watch what's happening. I mean, OSHA, they're going to go in, somebody's going to go in very quickly for a restraining order in federal court against OSHA. I am betting that a restraining order at a national level is going to be granted. So that, you know, just watch for that. That's all I can say right now.
So,
Well, another factor is it's a little difficult for us to do all the research necessary to accomplish that. And we know that others are going to be doing it. And then we can kind of tag along when a lawsuit is presented, we're going to see the arguments that are made. And so that's a practical matter as to, we can't really address every single situation.
so the recommendation would simply be sit tight, try to dodge through. And if you feel as though your company is going to fire you imminently, then reach out and call you guys. But until that, you have that feeling, just kind of hang tight and watch what goes on in the rest of the country.
Right. We are, you know, because we know there's other efforts in place, that is, you know, our focus is right now in Ohio and these, you know, federal contractors. You know, we're just, yeah, hold tight. It's coming. There are, you know, there really are not enough lawyers out there doing it, but there are lawyers doing it. And we know that one's coming. I guess that's all I can say about that. And we're going to be watching for it.
And I do think that the impression is that they're going to have a tough time enforcing that OSHA mandate. So we will see, but there's only been a handful of efforts similar in history and using the approach that they're using. And most of them have been turned down.
All right, so another question here is how should people's dialogue with, say, school districts, school boards and stuff that are either non-responsive or only respond with canned answers?
But they're not going to react to you is what's going on. You're going to have to make a legal challenge then. The bottom line is at some point they aren't going to listen apparently, but obviously I don't know. And it all depends on each circumstance. You do the best that you can is all I can say. But if they choose not to listen to you, then you're going to have to resort to your legal remedy.
Sorry, I'm responding to somebody here. I think everybody was asking Forever Young to have her email. It looks like, I think she posted it.
She did.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how to get it over onto the Facebook side without, you know, typing it all out by hand. But yes, I'll put it over on the Facebook side as well.
Okay. All right. I hope that there's so much to cover here. Do you have some more questions there, Catherine?
Let's see here. Most of them. Most of the ones I think I've caught most of the ones that I saw there. So yeah, this would be if anybody has any specific questions that we have missed.
I'd like to make a general observation. I think a lot of what is going on is just an effort to, intimidate people into doing this, even though I believe is known that a lot of the approaches are not going to be upheld legally. They are using this just to see how much they can push people into getting these vaccines. So I do think that ultimately a lot of this is going to be stopped legally. But I guess I'm saying this because I want people to know what I think the real game is. They don't really necessarily think that a lot of this is legal, but that they can sort of push people into doing it. I'm suggesting that people stand up and understand what's going on here. It's not just a legal move. It's a move to use whatever tool they can get to get acquiescence.
I've got a couple of quick questions here at the end. One is, can an employer fire you and say they can't accommodate and then go through a subcontractor and then give somebody accommodations? The answer is no, but that's a very short answer. The long answer is that it will require a lawsuit, and it would have to, the problem is when you lose your job over one of these issues, you're looking at a couple of years before you actually recover through an individual lawsuit against an employer. So, I mean, yes, you can sue over that. It is, it could be classed as retaliation or something else. But it's going to take a while to do that lawsuit. And I see the job has been posted, and I'm still working. Oh, jeez. Well, Deanna, we can talk to you about that. Just understand that we are trying to deal that you have a long time to bring that lawsuit usually. We're trying to deal with the immediate stuff. You can certainly get in touch with Kay at our law office and get on the schedule, and we'll talk to you. But you're talking about a 1 to 2 year process, unfortunately. Somebody else said, is it better to have an employee sue the university than parents or students? Can a group of parents and students do it successfully? Well, first of all, you have to have standing to sue. So the employees certainly have standing and can sue. Students certainly have standing and can sue. I can tell you that the employees that have stood up and sued, they are very brave. I mean, there could be all kinds of issues that arise in their workplace. Students, their universities are going to be a little more loath to retaliate against a student. They're more easily going to retaliate against an employee. So, and the parents actually don't have standing. So it's the students and the employees that have standing. I know the parents are out there. I love them to death. They are supporting their kids and they're supporting these lawsuits.
Well,
so
standing with regard to universities, but not regarding the younger students. They would be guardians that would be named in the suit.
Yeah, I hope I was clear. I was kind of talking in response to that question about UC, but yeah, parents have standing for any child under 18. Once the children are 18, they've got their own standing and have to sue under their own names. So, okay.
So here's another question, again, coming from more of a practical nature, because again, we don't have 1,000 clones of you guys. So, it is a lot of, when you guys talk about, well, you've got to stand up, you've got to push back. What would be a list of actions that you would recommend to do exactly that? Like in order of, first, obviously, write letters or contact and that kind of thing. And how would it escalate from there? I mean, obviously, the first thing you want to do is talk and say, hey, this is crappy, stop doing it. But what would then be the next escalation onwards? Where do we get lawyers involved, et cetera?
Well, there was a group called, what is it? Ohio Stands Up.
Yeah.
And I would talk with them, because if you gather together, you can figure out approaches that will have more impact. So contact a group like that.
I'm more talking about at the local level. So, I mean, I get contacted quite a lot from, people dealing with their local boards of education and specific employer situations in that kind of way, where it's not so much a larger organization situation, but in terms of how to escalate standing up. I mean, most of us, like me, have absolutely zero experience in trying to get heard. So how do we do it? I mean, what would be the recommendations you guys have for, and again, when to get legal support involved?
Well, listen, Ohio Stands Up is working with people on a local level. Jason Hedges has gone out. Sometimes we've had a meeting. We had some meeting up in Ashtabula County and then in Willoughby and in those areas. and mentor. And, Jason Hedges is really trying to help people form their own local groups. So I think it's very helpful. I mean, he's not a professional at this. He started this a year ago, I think, or a little more than a year
A little
ago.
more than a year ago.
After seeing after kind of foreseeing what was happening. And I think, he's really, I think it's really, I think it can be helpful if you want to contact Ohio Stands Up. And I did post them on the messages. I think I posted it. I'll make sure it goes to everyone. I think it would be helpful to talk with Jason about what he's learned in that time, and how to get your group organized. You certainly don't have to talk to Ohio Stands Up, don't have to talk to Jason. He's just offered that for himself. But obviously, we've got to come together. We're going to be, we're trying to get attorneys to join with us. And we're trying to join, we're linking up with attorneys nationally, and talking to people all over the place so that we're sharing information, briefing, legal arguments, legal ideas. And that's exactly what we all have to do, is create a huge network of people that can support each other. So that network then, resources just come in from networks. You don't even know the resources you have until you get together. Somebody's good at web design, somebody's good at media, somebody's good at computers. Everybody brings and joins their talents, and you become very powerful. Then after that, I mean, I really do think, we're at the point that we are going to have to come out of our houses and our offices and protest. I mean, I think it's helpful. There was a protest at Children's Hospital one afternoon, and we just walked out of the office and went down and joined with them that afternoon, for example, for the medical workers. So I think that's very helpful. I think it's important that we do some of these protests, so that, that's important, just like everything else. So protest, writing letters, and protest, remember, protest brings media. Media loves conflict, which may be bad, but they do love conflict. And so you'll get coverage. I mean, when we drove down and joined with the Children's Hospital folks the other week, there's the media. They got their cameras out there. They will, it does seem like they will cover it. We know within our media sources that there are reporters and producers that are with us. They want to get these stories out there. They want to explain what's happening. So they're there. They'll find you if you're organized, if you're protesting, if you're suing, they'll find you. And we have
kind of. I was down at the State House yesterday with Health Freedom Ohio and the Ohio Children's Health Defense Fund. I think that's what they are. Down at the State House, and I do not believe there was any media there that was not part of that group. It was probably at least 300 people, and they're not interested. They're not seeing us. So I mean, this is kind of a question also from my perspective as well. I've gone to quite a few protests all over the place, and it is this kind of thing where there's this expectation of, yes, the media likes conflict, but then they don't show. And so how do we get beyond that?
You're flummoxing me a little bit, because I mean, we have been in touch with some media people that we know, and they have been, willing to come down and cover some things, maybe,
we need to connect all these groups, we've got bodies here that need to be seen.
As we get going, I guess, I mean, I've been very willing to share the folks, and we've got, I'll tell you really frankly, we have in Cleveland, we've got somebody. So if you have a group that you're doing a protest, call me. I don't want to put his name out publicly. And then we've got a very well-known reporter in Cincinnati who's willing to cover stuff and what's going on. So I've got a couple of them that are available. And if you're having something in Northern Ohio or down by Cincinnati, please get a hold of me. I'll get you in touch with them as quickly as I can. So
Okay, yeah, we need to centralize that information because it's becoming very difficult to contact.
I'm going to crowdsource this a little bit. I mean, you guys who are out there, if you know of media people who are willing to cover it in newspaper, radio, magazine, TV, we'd like to have that information. So we need to centralize that so that those reporters and those producers can be alerted when something's going on, because we know they're out there. They're in the minority, like I guess everybody here, but we know they're out there, and let's let them know at least so they can get busy, because they've got to go to editorial meetings. They've got to get approvals. It takes them days to get ready, and sometimes a week or so. So if we have a heads up, and we need to know people, reporters that so please send them to us.
Yeah, that's kind of the information I was trying to fish for here, is how to I guarantee you 99% of the people who are following me have never done anything remotely like this before. We do not understand how this works. It doesn't make any sense to us, and things that seem like they should be logically happening are not logically happening. So it's been very frustrating, to say the least.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Somebody said okay, the attorney at OU did contact us, by the way. We've been in touch with the attorneys. Thank you very much for doing that. So, all right.
We also do have Jason and Renee Hedges too on this, and I on the Zoom call.
Oh, well, let's get Jason on. Oh, there you guys are.
Hey, Warner and Catherine, thank you for having us and putting all this together. So yeah, Ohio Stands Up, we founded it in April of 2020 after my wife and I were really kind of scrutinizing what we've been hearing from Mike DeWine. So we become an advocacy group essentially, and we hired Tom Renz in July, and he's kind of assumed a more national presence. So our hope was that Ohio Stands Up would have always had sort of a pocket of attorneys that we could refer folks to, and I think with the help of Catherine, we found Warner, in his law firm. So what I think is really important is for people to start mobilizing in groups. And we have Ohio Stands Up groups, county groups, and not all 88 counties, but I'd say over 50. So if you can join those groups, they're on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, we have a MeWe page. In Twitter, we now have Twitter. What we would like to do is I would like to do is start helping groups of people raise money. And then Ohio Stands Up. We've had events almost every month for the last year that have been very instrumental in raising a lot of money. And we'd like to have our next event soon with Warner Mendenhall and his attorneys, so that maybe we can Ohio Stands Up can maybe start matching what other people are raising to help kind of create sort of a steady revenue stream for these lawsuits. So that's the direction we want to take it now, but people are going to have to start getting together and mobilizing. I think that's critical.
Yeah, and Jason, what would you, what's your advice to groups, to people who want to form groups? I mean, what are you finding is effective from your standpoint? Because you've been at this a while now.
I think, first of all, find people at close proximity to you, in either your county or neighboring counties, and start meeting up in person. Go out to have a dinner somewhere. We just did that last week here in Akron. We went to a place called Wise Guys, and that was where we had one of our first events. So a bunch of people from Portage County, Ohio Stands Up, and Summit County, Ohio Stands Up, we got together and we just had dinner and we chatted and we talked. We're actually supposed to have a meeting with a group in Hudson to talk about how can they fight back locally. So I think it's getting in touch with people in your area and surrounding counties and just start meeting up. Talk about what's happening in your county, talk about what you guys are doing, kind of do like a needs assessment. What needs to happen in your county, in your school district? What areas need to be tackled? And I would say prioritize them by a top 2 or 3 things that you guys want to focus on.
Yeah, I see some messages coming through. One was a direct message. Listen, everybody, I am just, I apologize for not getting back to everybody. I'm way backed up on phone calls. We're kind of dividing and conquering the contacts and trying to get back with everybody. I know some people have been waiting days and even over a week before getting a contact from us. So I just, we're trying to get back with everybody who calls. That's all I can say. I hope I haven't missed anybody that had something critical, but it's hard to explain what it's like. Jason knows, and Renee knows. It's hard to explain what it's like, but people are really, really up against it. We've got people that are getting ready to lose their jobs, and we are trying to be responsive to the most urgent stuff. Like I said, I was in Portsmouth Sunday. The most urgent stuff is going to get the attention. If you've been fired already and you've got a retaliation case, that, unfortunately, that's extremely urgent to you, but the lawsuit itself is going to take a couple of years probably. That's not something that's an immediate need. It's a need that needs to be handled in months, not days. So right now we are, dealing with the very rapidly developing situations. Okay. So go ahead, Jason. I think you're on mute still.
I think maybe something that we could try to put together is some sort of, what can we do in the interim? What are some things, how are some ways that we can fight back? What happens if you request an exemption and it's denied, or they force test you? I think in the meantime, because the lawsuits are just one aspect, and Ohio Stands Up has always had sort of a three-tiered approach, is we need to fight this politically, legislatively, and educationally. So, maybe in the meantime, Warner, while you guys are doing the heavy duty work, is people start getting together and let's put together some sort of a fact sheet of, what are our rights, and how are some ways, just bulleted things that we can say, what are our rights and how can we kind of respond when they come at us like this? And I think that would be maybe one of the first things we try to do as a group or groups of people.
Yeah, that's basically what I was trying to get at, is exactly this kind of bullet list kind of flow chart kind of thing. Okay, I have tried this, now I have to try this, now I have to try this, that kind of thing. And because I've been getting pretty heavily censored now on Facebook and getting 2 groups shut down, and I'm just about to get out of my second 30-day stint in Facebook jail. I actually am starting up a website, and exactly that kind of information. I'm gonna store all of the data that has been collected over the last 20 months, along with all the transcripts, all of this kind of stuff, all of it located in one place. And I would specifically love things like that, the lawsuits that have been won, or what laws are applicable, and exactly that. It's kind of like a flow sheet for, okay, I have been confronted now with my employer is doing this stuff to me. Now, what do I do to protect myself, kind of stuff? That would be something I'd love to have on that website, hopefully coming soon.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. Most of what we're dealing with, they've definitely flooded the box, so to speak, with all this craziness going on. The OSHA, the mandates, the safer workplaces, everything going on. They've just overwhelmed everybody. It's coming at everybody so fast. But longer term, we can change our own constitution. We can write our own laws for the state of Ohio, and those can be very strong and very powerful. So, we could put a health privacy law in the Ohio Constitution that denies employers the right to request any health information, for example. We can make medical freedom a much more clearly defined term in our own Constitution. I think there are some constitutional issues. We already have a law that requires an observable vote system. So, one of the things that I've always thought, I don't like electronic voting. I think we need to have, we need to change our voting system so that we have hand counted paper ballot votes that are voted locally, counted locally, and then submitted, then the numbers are submitted to the boards of election. That could be changed. So we have some changes, and we have some changes we can make as people. We just have to sign petitions. We have to be organized. And I think we could, we're in the midst of this incredible awakening of people in terms of, that government power is bursting its bounds and needs to be reined back in. And our limited government, which we were always proud of, is no longer so limited. And we need to reimpose those limits, which we can do through constitutional amendments. Obviously through our elections, things like that. So anyway, I'll tell you what, we've been on for an hour and a half. I appreciate everybody coming on board. I know there's lots of unanswered questions still. I hope we were able to get some questions answered here. But I think
actually you got the most of them there. I think a lot of them have been covered pretty deeply.
One of the things I say to everybody in every group that I talk to is that for us, it's a privilege to take on these battles. And we don't get to engage in that privilege unless people stand up on their own and in groups. That's how we get hired. And that's how we're able to even do the work we like to do, is because somebody's standing up. When they stand up, they create the legal controversy that allows us to go to court and make the arguments you've heard. So these arguments that we hold in our heart, we can't even make unless you're there. So I always thank everyone who shows up and stands up, because I can't even do what I love to do without you. And even though it's overwhelming right now, even though I haven't slept much, this is something we really appreciate, all the people who are trying to get our government back under control. And I want to thank everybody who was here tonight.
Yeah, and I want to thank you guys. You were the one who reached out to me quite some months ago, and I'm glad you did, because I mean this has been the biggest frustration, is getting the people who have all of the problems that have followed me or I've encountered in all this time, and we needed to get them together with attorneys willing to actually stand up and do it and fight it for us, because we need those two groups together. So hopefully a lot of questions were answered, how to address it. Now also with Ohio Stands Up, another group that has been building in different places that can help people, okay, how do I take these steps to be, a rabble rouser when none of us have ever done this before? We don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, but you see how it's so serendipitous that we sort of find each other and people start linking up, and then you meet the greatest people, Jason, Renee, Catherine, all of you out there. It's just, even though it's exhausting and everybody's put in way more time, than they thought they were gonna, it's just, it's also fulfilling in a way. We know we're part of something that's good. We know we're part of something that is going to improve our country and get our government working for the people again. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Dee. Thanks, Megan Lee. Thanks, everybody on here. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and close this out of this. I appreciate it, Catherine. Appreciate it, everybody. Right. I'm stopping the live stream now.